Good day, folks. This is Bob from BBD with geopolitical news and views, mostly views. Like I said, there is an alliance developing that obviously, in my opinion, India should not really be a part of, which is, yes, like I said yesterday, Sergei Lavrov is in China trying to promote cremate the US dollar, as so as to say. But here are the rogues in the gallery. China, Russia officials meet in show of unity against EU and the United States. There's one bankrupt nation, the other one a thief nation, another one a nation that spreads the Wuhan virus. I'm not sure whether you can trust either of these two guys. They look like rogues in a rogue, they look like gentlemen in a rogue gallery. And guess who else is there? Xi, Kim share messages reaffirming their alliance. Well, here comes another rogue, Mr. Kim. His country is responsible for probably the maximum proliferation of nuclear weapons, especially to our neighborhood. But guess who's getting nervous here, folks? And buying insurance, covering their bets. Modi greets Imran on Pakistan Day, calls for end to terror. This is after all the small moves towards some kind of a detonate that have been made between India and Pakistan, including a statement by General Bajwa saying that enough is enough kind of thing. And here we have Jaishankar Qureshi might meet in Tajikistan. Interesting. Buying insurance. I think even Pakistan's trying to realizing that it really can't be part of this rogue gallery because it won't go anywhere. One is first is going to get no money really except for debt, and it's going to sink in it. I think they're probably already neck deep in trouble with China, and they're getting nothing from Russia. Then what do we have? China hit by sanctions over Xinjiang. Britain, Canada, the US and the European Union imposed penalties on Chinese officials on Monday over human rights abuses of Uyghurs, Muslims and other ethnic minorities in Xinjiang. The move comes day after a heated encounter in Alaska between US and Chinese officials. So like I said, finally the European Union seems to be coming on board. And then we have another article which says how to respond to a genocide. Business as usual with China can't be an option. It says last week the foreign ministry announced that many companies and residents in Xinjiang suffered heavy losses as a result of a US ban on imports of cotton produced there. Beijing blamed the measures on Adrian Zeng, a dogged German researcher who has exposed many of the crimes committed against the Uyghurs. It is the first admission that they really are suffering major economic losses, he said. United States imported 9 billion worth of cotton from China in the past year, and 87% of the country's production originates in Xinjiang. So obviously it's hurting. Mr. Zeng has called for Congress to pass the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act, which would block all imports from Xinjiang unless there is proof they were not tied to forced labor. Beyond that, the Biden administration and other democracies must take on the question of whether to attend the 2022 Olympics in Beijing, right? Then, here's what we have. US seeks India's assistance on China. It says Biden administration officials are treading carefully as they try to assemble a coordinated international strategy against China. They say India, as a democracy with a rapidly growing economy, offers opportunities to work on a range of issues. Obviously, they're going to have to overlook our democracy and S-400. The reason being that they did the same thing, right? One should bring up and highlight the fact that when Nixon did a detonate with China, China hardly had a human rights record, had no human rights record, no laws, nothing. They still went with it, supported it for so many years despite all that, just because they wanted to counter Russia in the first place, break it up, and secondly, because of the money eventually, right? Then you have divisive meetings test US ties to Beijing. He said, Secretary of State Anthony Blinken told reporters afterwards that the governments are fundamentally at odds. We were clear-eyed coming in were clear-eyed coming out. So obviously these things are just not working well for China. Meeting tests US Beijing ties. Beyond, the foreign policy specialist said, the acrimony shows shifting perceptions that each has about the balance of power between the two nations, increasing the likelihood of miscalculations and conflicts over hotspots like control of critical technologies and China's claims against Taiwan and Japan in the South China Sea. A target is electric vehicles maker Tesla Incorporated. Both governments face pressing domestic issues, giving them reasons to try to limit costly confrontation. However, a key part of Biden's strategy to compete with Beijing working with US allies also angers Beijing, which sees the alliance as central to US's effort to constrain China accent and limit its influence. About time. But what? The gaps in America are essentially in Wall Street and in Hollywood. Like the things like this. JP Morgan to invest in China Bank. Give me a break. Chinese trying to show a finger to the United States. China increases buying of Iranian, Venezuelan oil. Okay. UK finally getting on board, knowing all the kind of trouble it is. And see, US and China trade barbs at Alaska meeting. The Chinese government clearly feels it doesn't need to adhere to long established standards, she said. It feels has the upper hand and it also doesn't mind being seen as violating written and unwritten rules. That's very dangerous. Okay. UK finally on board. We have been confused about China, says ex-security chief. The former head of the National Cybersecurity Center has labeled Britain's policy towards China confusing, as he predicted that there would be greater caution in future over dependence on Chinese technology. And here's another report coming out in the Financial Times. China is not as invincible as it looks. Interesting episode. Caroline Wilson's summons to the Chinese Foreign Ministry was intended to intimidate. Our ambassador in Beijing received a ticking off for publishing an article making the case for free press. Okay. Our envoy was unbowed. She tweeted, "I stand by my article," noting that outgoing Chinese ambassador to the UK published more than 170 articles in the British media. And we should take note. I want to see whether our ambassadors out there putting articles down, right? Chinese bullying creates a perception of invincibility until people stand up to it. That is happening a lot these days. Lithuania ambassador to Beijing, Diana Mikvisines, was recently hauled into the foreign ministry for a midnight rebuke, a tactic straight out of the Stalin era diplomatic playbook for a country's role in leading a revolt against China. And China's divide and rule tactics in Europe, this centered around the 17+1 grouping, a Chinese-run beauty contest in which countries with cash-hungry and neglected eastern half of Europe compete for trade and investment favors from Beijing. Lithuania made its feeling plain and sent only a lowly transport minister. This is to a meeting called by Xi where he wanted everybody to attend, right? Prime Minister and above. 5 other countries joined the protest, snubbing the Chinese leader and ensuring a fruitless summit. This highlights the weakness of the Beijing regime's maximalist approach. If you insist on absolute obedience, you look stupid and weak when people defy you. And just as cowardice compounds compliance, bravery sparks more resistance. And that's what's happening, folks. And India has also added its spine. The Beijing authorities are trying to nobble the world's media and publishing industry as they have already muzzled Hollywood. Tinseltown, with an eye on the huge Chinese market, has not produced a feature film with a China-critical plot, line or character for more than 2 decades, folks. Lithuania is opening an office in Taiwan. Everybody's getting on board, right? But the finance of many of its so-called Belt Road and initiatives has dried up. And in the projects already underway, promise often outstrips performance. The message for Britain in all this is clear. If we stand up to China on human rights on Hong Kong, on infiltration of our universities, or for the matter on our ambassador's right to state of views publicly, we are increasingly not alone. We will be part of an expanding coalition of countries that are seeking to counter China's mischief-making and petulance. So, folks, we are not alone either. More after the break. Welcome back, folks. Forget being alone. We are actually the core resistance block that is allowing a lot of cement to be added to the spine of the world, folks. So, I don't see this going anywhere. Flag human rights in India. Key senator to US Defense Secretary asked Austin to oppose Russian S-400 missile deal. You know what happened? There was a lot of diplomatic talk. Secretary Austin conveniently sidestepped it. The statements made keep that side happy. Counter statements made by us keep us happy. But this is what you need to note, right? Chief Ben Hubbard wrote that American strategic interests prevail over the ideals of human rights and free speech. Today, Biden's press secretary Jen Psaki defends the administration. So here's what I say, folks. This is in the case of Saudi Arabia, and we really don't have that much of a record, a human rights record, as bad a record as Saudi Arabia, right? What do we have here? What's in India's image? But we must, irrespective of what the United States does or not, we for ourselves must ensure that our image is what it is projected to be, right? What is in India's image? A lot, and see what Seema Sirohi right. There's no denying that India's image has taken a beating recently, shut down by internet shutdown, case by sedition case, protest by farmers protest. The attrition of soft power seems to be happening faster than the accumulation of hard power. That's the important part. Demonizing, critics and squashing dissent diminishes India's international standing, right? Rants by BJP's widely deployed Twitter army to the contrary only proves how deeply it hurts. It matters that India has enjoyed a rare spot in the hierarchy of nations as a pluralistic democracy despite unrelenting odds. No one cites Pakistan and China as shiny examples. But these days, India's friends have begun to worry about the liberal tilt, the illiberal tilt. It should worry us too, right? Bottom line, pretending that all human rights organizations are pure as driven snow is just as short-sighted as unleashing the power of the Indian state against activists, comedians and journalists. Okay. And rightly, wrongly, New Delhi rejects report as misleading and placed. This is the Freedom House report. But as somebody says, perception matters. India betraying undemocratic tendencies, though not a deal breaker, will naturally be disconcerting to the new partnership. Laws like CAA and criminalization of interfaith marriages, widespread use of sedition laws, targeting of Bollywood, citing hurt sentiments and curtailment of academic freedom harm India's soft power, which cannot be separated from its hard power. Rather than bristle at the criticism or withdraw again into an isolationist cell, NDA government must show greater confidence over free speech and democratic rights than its predecessors by repealing sedition, blasphemy and restrictive marriage laws. Jai Hind for that. Then you come, things fall apart from JNU to Red Fort, the dangers of abusing process of criminal law to finish off agitation. Through the decisions to target the farmers' leaders by FIRs, the government has once again revealed that it intends to use the process of the criminal law to finish off the agitation. There will be arrests minus bail from under UAPA. Other states like UP may simply incarcerate people under NSA. Cases will drag on. I think that they may not be able to do so. The rule of law in a democracy rests on the voluntary compliance of citizens. If a section of people begin to think that the laws or its applications fails to give them justice, things again begin to fall apart and people begin to use extra legal methods. Dissent going underground, where it is preyed upon by extremists, the net loser is the country at large. Farmers stir may challenge US ties with India, says report. I think if we play our cards right, it probably will not, right? And then what you have, Pranab Dal Samta, right? Foreign correspondence. It may not be a bad idea to make the case if one is convinced that all India is trying to do is balance democracy with effective governments like many other countries have done in the past. In sum, the way the Modi government crafts its approach on the critical conversation on the external may just hold the key to determine the pace at which the pieces can be moved on the domestic end too. Right? Here, the changing global context may be more of an opportunity than the destabilizing factors it is often made out to be. At the end of the day, whatever the trolls, BJP trolls and the unbucks believe that they don't care about what the West says, they actually breathe when the West praises India for whatever reason. Let's face it, it does matter. Their money matters. Their technology matters. Without it, we will be part of the rogue gallery which includes Kim, Sergei Lavrov, Wang Yi with Xi as the king. Jai Hind.